Are live.
We are live. Okay, great. All right, everyone. Hello, Facebook community. My name is Rosemary Dominia, and I'm the founder of Reaching New Depths Coaching. Happy New Year to all of you. 2021, the year of the upside. As one of my coaches, Jennifer Kem, I'm going to give that to her because she's the first one to say it to me. But I'm really happy to come back, and I'm trying to bring in a new type of talk and energy this year. So last year was real talk, self-love. This year it's going to transform into real talk, transforming your energy in 2021. So I'm bringing on guests who can really give us ways and teach us ways on how to take care of ourselves, because 2020 was draining in many ways with COVID, with all the social justice issues. I mean, you name it. It was a year full of heavy, impactful things that have, steered us in directions of negativity, in fear-based anxiety. I mean, there's so much that has come up. So you know what? Now is the time. Let us transform together as a community. And really my hope this year for all of us is to continue to grow healthily and help each other and support each other in ways that we haven't done yet or continue to do. So I'm really excited to bring on my first guest. And I mean, personally, she has helped me in a time of need. And my personal spiel with her is that when I lost my dad in 2019, I was going through a very, very heavy grieving period. And so there was a mutual friend, her name is Susanna, and I will give a shout out to her for letting me know about this wonderful person who you're about to meet. But she was someone who guided me through a lot of care with my own grief, support in ways that I didn't know were possible. Because I come from training, you guys know that I'm a nurse, so I do a lot of Western medicine. But there are a lot of other types of medicine that are out there, like Eastern medicine, that's very helpful, that I'm trying to bring in now to all of you. And so she is someone who is an asset to my grief and really helping me cope with some deeper things. And I trust her entirely. She is very wonderful. I'm sorry, I'm trying to find your bio. I lost it. Hold on one second. One second. I want to introduce you properly. Sorry about that. The page got lost on me. Unless if you would like to introduce yourself, I'm more than happy if you want to just bring that live. Sorry about that. The page got lost on me.
No problem. But I can introduce myself. Awesome. I think I remember what I do.
Okay. But let me actually mention her name. She is wonderful. This is Giulietta Octavio. And she, again, like what I mentioned, has such a wonderful, wonderful person, both personally and on the job as a healthcare provider. But I'll leave that to you to describe the rest of what you do.
Thank you so much, Rose. Yeah, I'm a doctor of acupuncture and traditional Chinese medicine and an integrative medicine provider. And I work with people, kind of helping them integrate all the disparate parts of themselves. So, you know, I look at them as a Venn diagram of the mechanics of the body and their mentality or their mental processes, their emotional story, and their energetic or spiritual story. And we try to, you know, get all of those parts working in coordination together. So people feel really, really healthy, but also really happy and purposeful. And I love doing that. And yeah, and I love when people come to me in crisis, actually. That's kind of one of my favorite
it's your specialty. It's your specialty.
I know, yeah.
Truly. When did you open your practice?
So prior to being a doctor of acupuncture, I did a number of different types of body work and herbalism. So that was sort of a first iteration of the practice. And that started in 1999. Yeah, and then I became licensed in 2002. Actually, like the month my daughter was born, I got my state board license in the mail. So yeah, so it's been a while. It's been a little while now. Yeah, 19 years. So yeah.
I know this is a very simple question to ask, but I want folks to know out there, how on a scale of 0 to 10, I know this is something you'd ask for like pain with the patient, but for you in terms of how much you love your practice. I mean, every single day that you serve patients, especially when they're in crises, how much you love what you do on a scale of 0 to 10.
Oh, you know, it's in the 8 to 10 range. I feel like when it's an 8, it means that I need to go take some space for myself. It's sort of, that's sort of the bellwether of like, oh, I haven't done my own self-care. But it's a tremendous profession, and it's such a gift to see people, you know, kind of find their way through a difficult period and find themselves and find their own resilience and find their support system. And that whole process of watching somebody learn to care for themselves enough to ask for help and to receive help and to go through that process is just, it's so life affirming. Yeah, it blows me away every day. I feel really lucky.
No, that I will say, like, as a fellow healthcare provider, it is an interesting process to help people through very deeper processes that they're not even aware about on a surface level. So I do agree that for them to ask for help and on this deep level is a very, what's the word I want to use? It's not resistant. I don't know if I can think of the exact word, but it's something they're not even aware of firsthand. And I think this is where, even for me being under your care for a few months while I was grieving, it was hard to be vulnerable. It was hard to really face what I was personally going through with my dad's death and have someone really hold my hand and trust that that person actually really cared, if that makes sense. Because I think in these moments, especially in crises, if you're trying to recover from it, that the first thing you have to do is really come to terms with that I'm accepting that I am going through a crisis, and how do I get through that? How do I find someone who can truly support me through that?
And when you're in crisis, you're a bit in survival mode, right? So I think a lot of people view vulnerability with a great suspicion when they're in survival mode. And so it is very much about creating a safe space where, creating a safe space, which fundamentally means that you're creating trust with the person, and you make them feel safe by not only affirming their goodness, but also giving them an accurate reflection of all of the parts of themselves. So a lot of times people are afraid to be vulnerable because they have something they're ashamed of, or they're embarrassed by, or they didn't get positive reinforcement around. And so if you're able to say, yeah, maybe you don't have, maybe you have a little bit of a skill, you need to build your skill in that area, but that doesn't make you a bad person. And it certainly doesn't make you unlovable. And we can hold your fabulousness as we help support you, growing or developing in this area. And I think that's a huge relief for people. We often have to feel like we're perfect or we're crap, It's like getting out of that dualism that can be super healing.
Oh, that's powerful. I mean, just the dualism, and that's a very strong word. I think a lot of folks resist that, I bet, when they hear it. They're like, that's not true. But when they really think about it, I mean, it's part of being human.
It has to be true.
Yeah, no, I agree. No, I absolutely agree with you. I absolutely agree. I mean, like around the way that I grew up and in my family, there is no, such thing as being vulnerable or expressing emotion, right? It's either you're this way or that way, what you're speaking of, that dualism. So it's a very, I think as a culture as well, unfortunately, we have developed, not everyone is like that, but there is a strong hold on being perfect, not showing any pain, not showing any vulnerability, just you are who you are. You show up that way because you're supposed to do it.
Yep. And and there may be places in your life or out in the world where you do have to show up as one thing or the other, or kind of guarded. But at least when you come to see me, I hope that we make a space where you don't have to put on that show. You can be who you are, you can be what you are, you can fall apart even, and you're still going to be okay. And at the end of that process, we don't I feel really strongly when you work with people, that you want to make a space for people to really go deep, but then don't leave them hanging there. At the end of that hour and a half or whatever it is, just help them put those pieces back in the box and close the lid, and know that we'll get back to it later. You don't have to go out in the world like a hot mess. And I think that creates safety for people too, to have a process that they have a little, they don't feel like once they've, opened the Pandora's box, then they're just insane, and yeah.
Nice. Well, I know we've tapped a lot into it already about what you do, but if you were to describe to everyone what your role is, how patients come to you and how you provide care, can you go a little bit more into that?
Sure. I think people come from there are a couple different pathways where people find me. Some people find me because they're in pain, or they're having some kind of an urgent physical crisis. They're in neck pain or, acute back pain or something, and somebody sends them to me because I work hands-on and I work with people physically. And so that's sort of one pathway to get to me. And then we'll work with the pain, but we'll also work with sort of the somatic mind-body aspect of it. So, once we've kind of understood the mechanics, then we kind of walk into, well, when did that pain start? And what were the circumstances? And when does it tend to flare up? And looking at the pain as basically a language that the body is speaking. And what can we learn from it? So that's one pathway. Another pathway is often I work with a lot of people who have difficulty having children, so infertility or fertility issues. And so, that is such a core fundamental desire for many people in life. And it brings up all kinds of stuff, everything from our sense of power or potency or, creative life force in the world, to our relationships, to economics and socioeconomic stressors that are going on. And then, when you get into different scenarios around insemination, it gets into, access and equity in terms of fertility. And so that's another place where, every challenge is an opportunity to know more about who you are and what your values are and what you really stand for in life and how to ask for it and how to find it. And so that's another area. And then the other would be an emotional crisis. So yeah, when somebody's having anxiety or panic attacks or in depression or grieving, those are really important places to be held and to be nurtured. And so, and it often shows up in different ways in the body too. So I would say those are the three paths in.
Awesome. No, thank you for sharing, what you do. And again, throughout this, I will say that for my own process and working with you when it came to grieving, there were a lot of, this is as an example to show the community too, that, working with you and what happened to my body. I don't know if you remember the swelling, my hands, like my legs, the hives. Every time honestly, guys, every time I saw her, I would pretty much break down at that point because the grieving was so heavy, but I didn't really have a space to do that outside. So it was really nice to be around someone who can understand holistically, or the whole body, mind, body, and spirit, and to treat that all in one shot, especially when it comes to the grieving emotional crisis part. Everything you're doing is holistic. You are very integrative in what you do.
I do believe that it's important to have the Western medicine side of it. So we don't, it's like, I don't think it's either or. I think it's important to use Western medicine for the things it's good at, to triage and test and rule things out. But I think one of the things that can happen when you get these physical symptoms, like for instance, the ones that you had, it can add another layer of panic or anxiety to an already difficult process, because you start to think, oh my God, what's wrong with me? I'm really ill. And in fact, you're going through a physical and emotional release process. And so to check in with your Western and to have a safe place to, once you've ruled out anything mechanically wrong, and then to have a safe place to just be there, I think it can be really instrumental in some major growth, and just self-care, self-love, which it's so nice that you've created this series to be about that.
No, definitely. I think it's working in healthcare too now for going on 14 years. And what I've seen personally as a nurse in the many different jobs I've had, is this lack of, I don't want to say emotional connection, but the part of it, a lot of it is physiological, which I understand that we have to figure out what you're talking about, the mechanics first. But then there is that other part of what someone goes through in their mind and mentally that I've seen not be addressed as much. So
it seems like, in Western care, there's not enough time. You have so many things you have to do, it seems like, on your plate that are not the emotional piece. and then there's just not there's not space for it. It doesn't seem like, even though it's there. So.
And I think that's the one part for people like us in the ways that we treat our clients or that we go through that process with them. I think that's one just as important aspect to address and help someone heal through. So I will say that that's why this talk really did come about, and having you come on as my first guest in 2021 is off the bat, knowing that it is okay to have fear and anxiety. These are things you should not fight or resist. Rather, channel your energy into understanding why you're going through this and heal through that process, but finding the right people to do that with too. So you're bringing up a lot. Okay.
Oh, I think, you know, I've observed so many nurses who, you know, they have so much on their plate in terms of handling the mechanics and monitoring people's kind of physical mechanical body. But just bringing in even just a simple moment of empathy is so powerful. And I've seen you do it. I've seen other RNs do it. It's impressive. It says I can't really go deep into that right now, but I can see it. And just, you know, to let people know that they can be seen is really, it's super helpful.
Absolutely agree. You actually reminded me of someone I saw recently. So when I was discussing with you before this, we went live on this call, as I came back into healthcare. I was out of it for a year because I was grieving. And I went back in October. So I've been doing a lot of COVID testing. And there was one patient it was like a 10-minute visit to do a swab. And out of that visit just came out so many things that had happened to her this year. Like her husband was diagnosed with cancer. She just had a baby. She just changed a career. And I mean, on top of that, the heaviest thing was just knowing that her husband had the possibility of dying. And so I just looked at her, and I just, that moment of empathy, I was like, you know what? You had a hard year. You did. You had she's like, yeah, I know. I just had to get through it. And I said, but you made the choice to do it. And there's a huge difference in that. You actually chose to be resilient and work through it. And here you are today, continuing to live for your kid and for your husband. And she just needed that moment of validation, because it changed the whole energy of just even the 10-minute appointment of just validating,
Absolutely.
you know what, she went through a hard time, but she is still standing, but she chose to do that. Because most people think, like, I just have to do it. I just have to get over it. But I'm like, you know, you actually have a choice in what you really want to or choose to do, and how you want to carry through with it. So
yeah, I think that's something in 2020 that's been really hard for people, is that because we haven't been able to be in person and connect, we miss that empathy exchange. And there's a little bit of an empathy deficit because we don't have those moments in person. And I think it's funny that you brought that to the game with, you know, like in the middle of swabbing somebody's. That's pretty great.
Hey, you gotta fit it in somewhere. But I was also listening to her story. I mean, that's part of it as a provider, is listening to, accepting patients or clients when they come in, who they are, how they're, it doesn't matter, but just holding that safe space for them, even in 10 minutes, right? In a 10-minute appointment, like, yeah. But speaking of COVID and going into that realm, in 2020, what are the trends and patterns you have seen with your clients in patient care? And how did you able to manage and treat?
It's all, you know, the downstream effects of stress. Really, like when there just an explosion of panic attacks, anxiety, acute pain episodes, acid reflux, which is another sign of sympathetic overdrive, vertigo, teeth grinding, a huge amount of teeth grinding, and I would say those were the biggest things. And it took some time in my practice, because the first couple months of COVID, there wasn't enough data for me to know how to treat safely, and so I did mostly remote. And then after about 3 months, I was able to put procedures in place that I felt comfortable with, to see people in person. And I went back and forth on it, but it felt to me, if I was able to help somebody not have to go into a hospital setting or not have to go into a clinic, that was providing a service. So if somebody was in pain or very anxious, to help keep them out of the hospital was the goal. So
understandable.
Yeah, but it was an enormous amount of stress symptoms. Yeah.
Oh, I bet. I mean, like, I keep saying like 2020 was a crazy, was a crazier, hands down.
Yeah.
And now, so based on, oh, sorry, go ahead. You're gonna say.
Oh no, I was just gonna say, and people who live alone, it was like the people who live alone had a real touch deficit, and you could really feel how hard and painful it was to just be completely isolated. And then people who had a lot, young children or were in a really crowded situations, their nervous systems were just completely frayed and with overwhelm. So yeah, a lot of what you'd expect.
Yeah, no, exactly. I'm in the short period like I've been back, that's in a nutshell, that's what I've been seeing. And it's been difficult for people really on a mental health level, and then how that is translated into their body and their physical symptoms, for sure.
Yeah.
So,
have you seen a lot of uptick of substance and alcohol as well?
With the population I work with, not as much. I will say in the past, when I used to work in addiction medicine, in the Tenderloin, that probably would have been a common theme. Even if the pandemic didn't exist, the holidays tends to trigger a lot more substance use. But with the new population I work with, no. I think what I've been seeing is more of a lot of mental health fear and anxiety around COVID and managing and what next steps to take, especially if patients did test positive, and what that means for the anxiety, and trying to come with a plan that will help them, one, still continue to be healthy physically, but two, also mentally, to help the family realize we just have to wait, get tested at this point in time, and be more direct. So it's interesting. It's a very interesting world to come into now. But speaking of which, based on what you've seen in 2020, what would be your advice for folks in 2021 when it comes to their health?
I would say it's important to create structure and rituals to anchor your life right now, because there's not a lot still in the external world, but to have just very, very simple, the things that we would do for children, right? We'd have them go to bed at at the same time, and get up at the same time, and eat regular meals, and with a wide variety of food, and and have most of our mental stimulation in the before 3 p.m. and make sure you exercise every day, like very, very concrete, simple building blocks underneath our our kind of foundational behavior. I would also say that structure and those rituals should include play. I think we don't play quite enough anymore, and if we're gonna make it till the summer, which I kind of have this vision that the full moon in May, at the end of May, is going to be this this kind of turning point for people. But until then, I think we have to find ways to play and be silly, and and just goof off a little bit. I think there's a lot of just kind of bracing for disaster that's gone on. So that's my advice. And I think too, we have a lot of negative emotions that have built up over this last year. And I think finding ways to channel and transform them into positive activism is a really, it's a really interesting and worthwhile endeavor. To feel like I don't know, just driving through San Francisco, you see a lot of lines for people getting food, and it makes me angry and it makes me sad. And my friend's like, well, why don't you start volunteering? And I was like, oh, of course. Just like, it's like, okay, well, if I can't, maybe I'm not sure what to do, but at least I can package some, box some food to give to people or something. Like, find one thing that where you can feel effective, because it's hard. We have such a huge deficit of hope, I think, was a lot of an issue last year. And so finding ways to activate our own hope and our own optimism is really important.
Oh, beautifully stated. I want to point out that you did have a project that you were doing with the San Francisco Food Bank, was it? And you reached your goal?
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit more about what you did?
Yeah, I think a lot of people, and myself included, feel like self-care is selfish. And it's like, oh, I can't, how can I come and take care of my mental health, or take care of my body, or take care of myself, when all these other people are in such distress?
Hmm.
And so I was like, okay, well, why don't we couple our self-care with caring for others? And so just created a program where one of the things I did over COVID was to create a line of herbal medicine, of herbal formulas that people could take without having to see me in person, because at first it was hard. And so I started a program where every time people ordered anything from my apothecary, I would donate 2 meals for every item that they ordered. And
Hmm.
and so it was really, it worked really well. And so people
Awesome.
they were like, oh, I'm going to gift people these. And then we ended up, in the last 2 weeks of December, donating 500 meals to the San Francisco Marin Food Bank. And that was nice, just to like
Awesome.
make that. I'm hopeful to start other partnerships like that, so that we have a rotating series, because there's so many organizations that are doing awesome work,
Mhm.
like Homeless Prenatal and Faces. There's a lot of different places that I think it would be nice to couple those things.
Awesome. Wow. I'm learning more about you as you talk and just who you are. I think that's such you have such a big heart to do all of these things and also provide your services, but go beyond that. And I think that says a lot about you and being a very generous person. So I just wanted to that's
Well,
awesome.
thank
I just
you.
wanted to really
Thank you.
highlight that because I think a lot of folks right now, you're right, are all about me, even in a hard time, which is also understandable what happened with 2020, but sometimes reaching out and helping others who are in more of a need and who don't have those basic needs of food, even just food, shelter, and clothing are huge.
Well,
So to reach,
so much of our fear was activated in 2020, right? All of our
mm-hmm,
survival fear, like, oh my God, I could never, maybe I'm never going to make a living again. Maybe I'm going to lose my house. Maybe, so many people, they did have to take care of their own personal survival.
yeah,
And then we get to the end of the year, and some of us have come up, some of us have made it through this difficult time a little better off than others. And
mm-hmm,
we see how little social safety net we have in this country.
mm,
And so, I think knowing that we're all interconnected, I think it makes perfect sense to couple self-care with care for others,
mm,
because the healthier and happier and higher functioning, and the more resources all of us have, the better the world is. So it
mm.
goes hand in hand for sure.
No, beautifully slated. Can you repeat that one more time in terms of being connecting yourself outside of yourself? No, I think people need the reminder of
Well,
that. I really
yeah, I
do.
mean, we all exist within an ecosystem, right? We're not in a bubble. I don't live just me alone. I live, with my daughter, and my daughter, works at a bike shop, and my office is in the dog patch, and I go to the corner store, and like, so there's no way, almost every single thing each of us does affects somebody else somewhere.
Mm,
I mean, and so to think of it that way, we have to bring everybody up, at the same time. And I think of it like, when I work with people, a lot of times their internal suffering is created when they have these different parts of themselves, and one part has gotten more validation in the world than the other parts. And so it's kind of become a bully, right? Like you're like just for argument, let's say that, your logical part of your brain is the one that got rewarded the most. And so it's kind of bullying your more intuitive or more emotional side of your personality.
mm,
And yet, if we allow that to happen, if we allow one part of ourselves to suppress other parts of ourselves, we never get to be fully truly evolved. We never get to actualize the potential of all of ourselves, right? We just have this bully who's kind of running the show, and then a bunch of
mm.
sad parts that are angry.
That's
So
uh,
society is the same. If we reward certain people who look a certain way or have, a certain amount of resources, and we reward them, and we think they're better than everybody else, then those parts of society flourish, and the rest of us are sort of suppressed and angry and sad. But we never get to actualize the full potential of all of us. and what that could do to the world. I mean, you know, if we had every single kid who got full, you know, a full and fair and equitable education, think of all those minds we would have to solve the world's problems. You know, right now we just have a few. So to me, what we do internally with our own selves is reflected outward in our society and the way our society behaves, and we can change it from both directions, I guess, is my point.
Nice. No, beautifully said. I'm blown away by all of that, because it's a good reminder to how to start off this year. That's all. I mean, everything that you're saying, I think these things have been lost in the last year. And again, not saying anything. I mean, the way everyone was feeling in 2020 is completely valid. So I'm going to say that now, because a lot has happened. But
everyone was triggered in 2020.
Oh, totally. I mean, exactly. And people were right, in survival mode. But coming into the new year and, you know, meeting individuals like yourself to just share this message with people, right? Of course, it's important to take care of yourself, but now let's really, truly start supporting others. And we should have been doing this all along. I mean, it's not a new message, but
no, but the more people that start, the more courage it gives to others. So and the more support it gives the people who are already doing it. Like, you know, it's like we pull each other along one way or another. So
no, beautifully said. Thank you for sharing that. Thank
you. I mean, I think that's what's so beautiful about you starting this project, is that it pulls people in and shares. So yeah.
That's the goal, is just to help change, even if it's one person to just watch this and help inspire them in some way. Then I've done my job. I believe in micro change and small changes. I think those are the foundation of things that could be bigger later and more stable, versus a big change at once. So I do want to highlight your practice a little bit more. So what services I know you moved into a new office from what I saw, which makes it
I love it. I'm on the corner of 22nd and Pennsylvania in the Dog Patch. And it's a great neighborhood. My neighbors, I've never moved to a space where, you know, neighbors just would stop by, even in COVID, you know, with a mask on and whatnot, but just to say hello. And the vibe is really lovely and community oriented, and people walk their dogs and visit. And I love it. It's a great space in terms of, you know, I was looking for something bigger and had a lot of better airflow, and so it has 20-foot ceilings, and I have 2 big walls of windows and 5 HEPA filters, and so
awesome.
It's working really well. I'm really happy about it, and
nice. And then you also have your own line of products that you've mentioned briefly. So what are you currently selling?
So, you know, prior to COVID, I really only saw people, you know, in one-on-one, in face-to-face patient care. And COVID just kind of turned all of that upside down. And so, and I would prescribe herbs and supplements to people, one by one also. So this was an attempt to really create some universal formulas that people could use safely, and not have them be custom prescription. And so the very first one that I did, because one of the things a lot of my clients were talking about, they were drinking a lot of alcohol to kind of manage their stress, and that it wasn't working that well for them. Not that they were addictive, you know, that they were addicted to alcohol, but they were habitually kind of over drinking. And so the main product that I'm really excited about is a product that it's a substitute for drinking alcohol. So you can use it like a bitters and soda. You can make mocktails with it. And it's a series of nervines and nootropics and euphoric herbs. And it's all blended with raw local honey. And so there's some citrus in it. There's mimosa, damiana, which was an original, it's a Central American herb that was part of the original recipe for margaritas. So, and it's purported to be an aphrodisiac. I would say it's more of a body positive sensation, as opposed to like increasing your sex drive specifically. And then there's mimosa bark, and which in Chinese is translated as the tree of collective happiness.
Oh, interesting.
It-
Okay.
yeah, and it's
Nice.
used to open the consciousness. A lot of people do it before going to therapy, actually, and it helps them get in touch with their feelings a little bit more.
Mm,
And so it's just a really it's a lovely. You don't get high, you don't get drunk from it, but you do have a transformative kind of opening,
mm.
heart opening. And I have a number of clients who are therapists that drink it while they're facilitating therapy. It's kind of cool.
Okay,
And
I can see that
yeah,
being effective. Good. Okay.
yeah, I have a
Nice.
bottle of it here. That's what it looks like.
Awesome.
Yep.
Cool. Oh, that's
And
so awesome. Wow.
yeah.
Yeah, a lot of things are going on. I
Hmm.
so I mean, so interesting. I'm kind of in awe of everything that you're doing, and you have so much knowledge base behind everything. So I think if
Oh,
anyone's gonna
thank you.
take anything from today, or they watch the replay on this, I really want them to listen to your message. Well, one, about who you are and what you offer, and if this is
Mhm.
something that aligns with them or they need more care, that you will be available, which I will provide that information to you guys on social media, just her handles, her social media handles, and her website, so you can learn more about who she is and what she offers, and if it's appropriate for you. And two, just your message on how to approach 2021 with an open heart and looking beyond yourself, looking beyond
Mhm.
that, and continuing to connect with others. I think it's a huge thing that was lost in 2020, with for a valid reason, because of things that were going on that triggered all of us personally. But now we
Yeah.
can come back and grow more this year and do it together. So I think everything that you've said was beautifully stated. You're amazing, truly amazing. Do you
Thank you.
have any other things that are coming up that you want to tell the community? Any either special deals or sessions or anything
Mhm.
like that? Please share.
Yeah, yeah. With the uh, one thing we're doing this month in the practice is participating in Dry January, where people take a break from alcohol, and that's been really nice to just clear the head, shift the energy, and so I've been basically in the test kitchen making different kind of alternative cocktails with Euphoria. This the product is called Euphoria Found, and so yeah, I would say if that's something that appeals to people, if they want to try a dry January, doesn't mean you have to stop drinking forever, but it is a nice break, and just to start the year. There have been a lot of studies about taking a break from alcohol for a month, that the it can help with better sleep, clearer skin, improved mental focus, and those effects last beyond the month that you stop drinking. So that's pretty interesting.
Cool.
And yeah, if that's something that people are interested in, they're interested in Euphoria, I would say go to my website and check it out, or to Instagram. It's Go Apothecary, and right now there's 20% off on the Euphoria product if they put in Dry January 20
Gotcha.
in there.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm
So
gonna write that down to share later on.
yeah,
No, nice.
yeah,
Awesome.
and then if people are interested in my practice, I do offer a complimentary consultation, and so you can go to the website and sign up for that. You just take a look at my schedule. I'm happy to talk with you and just see if my approach makes sense for you, or if there's someone else I can refer you to. So yeah.
That's awesome. Thank you so much, Giulietta. This has been such a wonderful talk to have with you and learn more about who you are and what you're offering to the world, and continuing to spread your message through your community. So for anyone who's watching and you're tuning on live, please, if this does align with you, reach out to her. I can tell you again, firsthand, being one of her clients or her patients, like, she's truly wonderful what she does. And try. You can always, she's offering a free consultation. All it starts with is just a discussion to see if your values will align with her and if she can truly help you out. And I will say it's truly worth it. So I want to give you that. Thank you so much for joining me live. Thank you for the Facebook folks who joined on live with us as well. And we'll be coming back next month with something new, with a new guest. But for now, please take care. Thank you again, Giulietta, for your time.
Thank
Everyone
you,
have a
Rose.
good
It's been
night.
an absolute pleasure. Bye.
Awesome. Happy New Year, everybody.